ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. There are several people in the Bible that are put to a test by God. Maybe the most famous is Abraham. God tells him one day, I want you to sacrifice your son. Offer him on an altar. Obviously, that was a very difficult decision for Abraham. It was his only son with his wife Sarah. According to our rabbis, he was 100 years old, 90 years old. The Bible says so. It says, a ben tishim, a bat tishim. She was already 90 and was going to give birth. Our matriarchs had difficulty in giving birth, maybe to teach us that as much as we think that birth is a natural process, it involves God also. When a baby is born healthy, it is an extraordinary event. Even though it happens many a time, it is still a very extraordinary event. So Abraham is put to a test. But he is not the only one. A very famous one is Iyov. Iyov is a man who is very wealthy. Everything goes well with him. He has children, beautiful family. And Satan says to God, you know why he is faithful to you? You know why he's a religious man? That's because everything is well with him. However, if things were not so, who knows if his faith wouldn't waver? Well, he's put to a test. He becomes very ill, he loses his family, loses his riches, and the question is Iyov going to be faithful to God or not, even though he has lost everything? Of course, why does God put these people to a test? Doesn't he know beforehand what is going to happen, whether they are going to obey him or not? He knows everything. But the test itself serves as a step in progress of each and every one of these people. They grow emotionally by going through that test. And we know that in the case of Abraham, Isaac is not sacrificed, but they go through the steps in doing it, and thereby their faith is deepened by the episode that happened. Well, in a similar vein, the Torah says that after our ancestors crossed Yam Suf, the Red Sea, they started crying, we have nothing to eat, we're going to die, we're going to starve in the desert. Maybe it was better in Egypt where at least we had some food. So God decides to have manna. In Hebrew it's man. Manna is going to come down from heaven every morning together with the dew that covers the vegetation in the morning. And our ancestors are told, in the mornings, get up, collect sufficient for the day, and remember that if you collect more, it's going to rot. It was good enough for 24 hours. But there was a miracle on Friday. A double portion of manna was collected because on Shabbat, manna did not come down from heaven. So the Torah says, God says, I am going to put you to a test. Let us see if you're going to obey the law after you receive the manna. Very difficult to understand. You know, when do we cry out to God? When is our faith tested? When things aren't well with us, not when things are very good. I remember a friend of mine who's a rabbi was once visited by a couple. And as they started talking, the rabbi says, well, what's your problem? Why have you come to see me? Is something wrong in your marital life? Is there a problem with your children? With your job? What's going on? And they said, no, Rabbi, it's the other way around. My husband is advancing in his position every day. I am socially better accepted every day. Our children are marvelous. Everything is great. And we're beginning to be afraid. It's too good. We haven't done anything special. We are not special people. Why is God so good to us? They were afraid that they were too well off. In other words, a test may be when you are very well off. The rabbi of Kotsk, the Rebbe of Kotsk, and I think I quoted him already, once reflected about what happened in the Garden of Eden Adam and Eve were punished for eating the forbidden fruit. But the serpent was also punished. What was the sin of the serpent? She had induced the woman to eat of the fruit. So God says to the serpent, you will now have to crawl on your belly, and you will eat the dust of the earth. Apparently the serpent may have had some legs before then, and now she was going to walk just by her belly on the earth. But God also told her, you're going to eat the dust of the earth. So the Rebbe of Kotsk says, what kind of punishment is that? There is dust all over the world. So the serpent will always have what to eat. What kind of punishment is that? So the serpent says, you know what the punishment was? The serpent will never have to raise its head and ask God for food. She will always have it. You know, she won't have an incentive to communicate with God. We think many a time that when we ask something of God, we are begging. It's actually a privilege to communicate with God. And the serpent would not have that privilege anymore. So what God was doing with our ancestors was, you know, you get manna from heaven every day. After a while, you think that it's coming to you. It belongs to you. Well, you're being put to test. It doesn't belong to you. When God gives you abundance, it's because God gives you. It's not only when we lack, when things aren't good, that we should direct our thoughts, our prayers to God. We should try to communicate with Him. When things are very well, when things come your way, you should know it is no accident. It is God who is intervening as well. So bear it in mind. We, of course, go to the synagogue and ask God to please cure the infirm. You saved us from certain things, but there's something called korban todah, a thankful sacrifice to God, because things are going very well with you. Think about yourself, how many blessings you really enjoy, and you should be grateful to God for each and every one of those blessings.